Hey guys, welcome back to Authentic Talks 2.0. I'm super excited about today's episode because we're talking about growing through what you're going through. And on today's episode, we're talking with a former TEDx speaker, someone who is diving into a story of resilience, faith, and transformation. Today's conversation is one that will leave you feeling inspired and empowered, you guys. My guest knows firsthand what it means to grow through adversity. He's sharing a powerful story of resilience and revealing his unique formula called HEALS, H-E-A-L-S, a framework that's designed to help you navigate life's toughest challenges and come out stronger on the other side. If you've ever faced obstacles and wondered how to turn pain into purpose, this is the episode for you. You guys, before we dive in with introducing today's guest, I do want to share with you guys that we are now uploading all of the prior episodes on YouTube. The YouTube channel was paused for about 4.5 years, and now we're moving forward. And I just want to get the word out and share with you and have you share with your family and your friends that we're now uploading those podcasts and onto YouTube for you guys to be able to see the prior guests. And if you were a guest on the show, you now get to see your episode and see you if it was one that was recorded with video. If you're new to Authentic Talks, welcome. I'm extending an open invitation for you to come back again and again. And I'm extending an invitation for you to hit that subscribe button. That way you will not miss an episode once I upload a show. You guys get ready to share this episode with your family members, your friends, your coworkers, and even people that you don't know. You can let them know that this is an awesome podcast where we're talking about growth. We're talking about love. We're talking about respect, putting it all together for mind, body, and spirit, you guys. All right, let's go. Today's guest is a former TEDx speaker. He is the Chief Officer of Sanjiv Speaks. Please welcome Sanjiv Patel to Authentic Talks. Authentic Talks is all about authentic conversations. This show is all about growth, love, respect, success, mind, body, and spirit. If you're looking to grow and become your authentic self, then this is the podcast for you. And I am your host, Shanta. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show, Sanjiv.
Thank you, Shanta. Lovely to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. We have an awesome topic, or a lot that we could talk about where our listeners can definitely benefit. Before we dive in, can I have you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. I'm Sanjiv Patel. I'm the Chief Transformation Officer at Sanjeev Speaks, a journey that started informally, probably about 15, 20 years ago, and more formally since COVID. I took the turbulent times and the near-death experience of COVID to really reflect on what I want to do with every day of my life following that journey, and reinforce the desire to make a difference each day, each moment, in a small way, big way. It doesn't matter to me. Just want to make a difference to people.
I love that. You mentioned COVID. I know that COVID was definitely something that changed the way that we're operating to this very day, and we're trying to get back to the way things were, and we still have not quite returned there. Some people want the old way back, and some people definitely want to just keep moving forward. You said that you almost had a near-death experience. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So if I think back to my early years, my childhood, my journey till then, I guess I was always been that calm person in the room. So I've had all sorts of curveballs in life and in business. I come from a family who moved from Africa to the UK. I came in difficult times in the 70s when, things were tough for an immigrant. I guess we're seeing that full circle nowadays, or that time come again. But specifically down to COVID, one of the lessons I've learned in life is that you can plan as much as you like for the future, but life happens to you. There are no guarantees. And that doesn't mean you don't plan. It just means you plan as best as you can, and then you face things as they come and make your decisions as they unfold. So if I take it back to 2020, early 2020, I have a brother who I dearly love. He lives out in Australia. I call him the smartest doctor in the world. He's that super intelligent. He can talk about anything. But I remember having these conversations with him back in about January saying, Sanjiv, this is coming. It's real. We've had lots of false, alarms in the past with chicken flu and this and the other a decade or so ago, but this is different. So I said, so what does that mean? That, well, you have to prepare for lockdown. Now, this is unheard of at the time. But I remember kind of one Sunday morning, I came down and I said to my wife and my kids, hey, I'm going to the hardware store. Well, I'm going to pick up all these supplies in preparation for lockdown. And at the time, everybody was in denial. Shanta, although you could, if you had your feelers out, you could see what was going on in Wuhan district. You could see it was spreading this direction. You could actually start to sense that this is just inevitable. So I went, look, what's the worst that's going to happen? They told me I was overthinking this and probably taking it too seriously. I said, listen, the worst that can happen is I'll have a bunch of supplies that will sit in the garage and we'll use them up over time. But I've got to do this. So that was a starting point. I remember speaking to the loved ones and family and friends, casual conversations, touch the water and say, hey guys, what preparations are you making? And I used to get a similar reply from people. Really lovely, intelligent people who ordinarily would be open-minded, but everybody was in denial. So I found myself kind of ready for this situation as best as I could understand it. But as fate would have it, in the first 10 days of March 2020, a maternal uncle of mine who had been terminally ill for like 4 years suddenly took a turn for the worse, and that was his last leg. And I was really close to him. I was brought up with this extended family, and he was like a father to me. So I used to see him every week anyway, and I couldn't not be there. So I remember going to the hospital, seeing him through to the last breath, and then thinking really rapidly on my feet, okay, what do we need to do here? And in our tradition, there's a whole big way of giving somebody a send-off when they pass away. So I planned a prayer service for that weekend, which is a couple of days away. And then following that, the rest of the family, his kids, my brother-in-law, etc., were thinking about the formal funeral arrangements. And I remember, Shanta, about middle of that week, we had a call about 11:30, this kind of time, UK time, 11:30 at night. And it was a conference call. And I said, Sanjiv, we hear your concern. What are your concerns? I said, look, everybody's talking about safeguarding the elderly and the frail. Perhaps on the funeral invite, we should bear that in mind and maybe put that as a kind of a gesture and a warning to people. Say, look, come, but we understand if you can't. Please don't come if you're frail. And I remember at the time, emotions get the best of us at times of stress. And the response I had was, well, people will make their own decisions. I knew kind of by that time, it was even more clear to me what was going to happen. It was just a matter of time before we faced lockdown. It was literally a week or so before. So I had to make a decision for my family. And I think we all make these tough choices. Sometimes we know things are going to be risky or difficult, but because of emotional pressures, we take a judgment call. And I had living with me my mother and father throughout my life. I'd had the privilege of caring for them throughout my life. Again, which is kind of normal in my culture. Had my wife and my 2 kids living together. Lovely home. We took the choice. I made that decision to go to the funeral. I went with my kids, to my father, to pay the last respects that weekend. And as fate would have it, the following Monday evening, my wife was burning up with a fever. And we knew at the time, we didn't want to talk about it, but we knew at the time, this is more likely than not, this thing that was coming towards us, this invisible monster, alien that people had no understanding about, but it was taking over people's lives. We'd seen, body bags and mortuaries and truckloads of people being taken out of homes in Italy up until then. But as the person whose role in that family is to look after people, it was really difficult for me. And what I was focusing on is trying to keep calm and trying to just hope against hope, pray that this isn't what it is, and just keep going day by day. By the next day, I had the same fever. Now, they talked at the time about social distancing. There was no support. And then, well, by the time you got to that stage, it's too late because you're in a household living with each other, mingling with each other. And there was nowhere for me to separate people out anyway. So it was just a matter of going, hoping again, let me just do the usual things I do to deal with illnesses, the flu. You get the pain, you get the fever, you get the cough, and you sit there and go, yeah, I'll manage this. I was the type of person who never took painkillers up until then. I remember as this thing started to unfold, it got worse and worse and worse over days. As I saw those symptoms start to unfold in my kids, you can imagine the horror and the fear for somebody whose role in life was to look after his family. I've been brought up by a father who'd lost his father when he was 12 years old. And he took the responsibility of being that person to be strong for everybody. I've taken that role on naturally. And there's a joy in looking after your family, right? Looking after loved ones. But feeling inadequate, feeling, well, there's only so much I can do. But hoping against hope that this thing doesn't spread the way I'm seeing it. Because I was feeling the symptoms really severely. So that unfolded where my kids suddenly got the symptoms over a period of time. So I didn't know what was happening with them. Over a period of 2 weeks, thankfully, they seemed to have settled a bit by that time. But I saw it unfold in my father, my elderly father, 80-year-old, who I loved dearly, who had been kind of dealing with Parkinson's for 3 or 4 years of his last life at the end. But we'd looked after him and had such lovely memories at home. And, you know, I'd kind of roll over, curl up in my room every day in the flow of that pain. People who've had that kind of severe COVID will know it came in waves. So you had intense pain, intense fever. And then you get periods of, well, it's not better, but it's not as intense. So you kind of go, okay. There was no guidance in terms of, well, how do you manage this? So I was in those periods when I was kind of a bit more aware. I'd be chatting with my brother and saying, hey, what can I do about this? He'd test my breathing. He'll check in on what medications he could research. And I was trying everything. Nothing worked. Nothing worked. And so it became inevitable. There came a day when I had to take the call to let them take my father away to hospital. And we'd seen, I knew what that meant. The chances of him coming back were very limited. My daughter, 3 or 4 days before that, kept saying to me every evening, messaging me, Dad, call the ambulance. Dad, call it for me, because I was that ill. I was literally crawling. I couldn't get myself up to the washroom. It was that bad. Gasping for breath. And 12 hours later, they had to call the ambulance and take me in. So there was I, heading away from home. I remember it being a sunny day and looking back as they took me away from my house, knowing deep down that this could be the last time I'll see this place. But at that time, Shanta, I want to say I was at peace. And that's one of my first lessons and learnings. That why was I in that state of peace? For me, one of my pillars is my faith. Having a faith, something to lean on in those difficult times that gives you hope, that gives you strength, is so important in life. And so I had that, and I know I'd lived in accordance with that. I know I'd been the best father, best partner, best son as I could have been through those years. I never let any moment go. And as a message to everybody listening, don't wait till tomorrow. If there's somebody in your family or somebody in your loved ones, in your circle, who thinks they want something, need something, that you can do something for, don't wait till tomorrow. The only things I remember for the next few days in hospital were when they checked me in. And in between the tests, the consultant came up to me and said, listen, some bad news. It's all over your lungs. I can see the crystals. I've seen enough of these to know how bad this is. We don't need to wait for the tests. But the good news is you qualify for intubation, for an ITU. And that was scary. If in all that journey, that was a scary moment for me, because having to go into intubation, will they be able to pull me back out of that or not? Who knows how that trajectory happened. But again, all I did is focus on the moment. And I found myself trying to sit in any posture I could and focus on my breathing. So there was that journey of storm where you see this thing coming. I'm trying to find out information through news, through WhatsApp, whatever, as it was happening. As it got worse, I cut out the noise. One of my lessons in business and in life. As things get more difficult, don't drown yourself in lots of information. Focus on a few sources of information that you can rely upon the best as you can and make your calls. And that's what I focus on doing. And I got to the point of just focusing on my breath. And that's when I realized the power of breath work that we all take so casually, so lightly,
Oh, yes. I love
and
that.
we take it for granted. And that just focusing on a moment, focusing on my inner self, closing out the noise from the outside world and really centering. And that kept me calm. And being calm was part of me being stable, because fear sits here. For those of you who felt anxiety and fear, you'll know that sensation. It sits in your chest and it debilitates you.
Mm-hmm.
But my practice over years of yoga and spiritual practice of meditating every single day came to play there. And it's just focusing on the moment and focusing on that pure source that you are on and being at peace with it. I didn't give up. I didn't give up once. And I was determined to keep fighting. I'd been talking to him in the lead up to this. He'd been messaging me and saying, "Are you okay?" He was checking in on me. But after I got out of hospital, the good news is I managed to fight my way out. I remember him telling me, he goes, "Look, I was really worried about you." I said, "That's very kind of you, you know." He said, "No, you don't understand. That message, that last message you sent me." I said, "What was that last message I sent you?" He said, "The last message you sent me was my kids are great kids, look after them." Now that touched me. But you can imagine the state when I say near death. That's how much I was kind of prepared for this is going to be it.
Wow.
And I was at peace with it.
Wow.
During that period, I got, as I said, I fought out. I was fighting and I heard the news my father wasn't going to make it. I had to make my peace with that. He was in a different hospital. But I was determined in that moment to fight. And I remember when I was fighting through this, my focus was on my family. My focus is on being there for my mom, my kids. Worrying about them wasn't worrying about me. Again, one of the lessons I've learned in life is when you focus your energies on serving others and caring and loving others, you don't think about your own load. It becomes lighter. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Shanta. You must have listened to so many inspiring people in the past. And so off the back of that, I came out with a lot of knowledge because I'd learned about how this thing operates. I'd learned how I was battling it and how I was overcoming it. And I used that. I was determined to use every single bit of learning and insight I had to share with others authentically. So for the first time ever, I put something out on Facebook, like a video. I looked a mess. But as soon as I was able to competently write something down, you know, I just start writing, stop, start writing, stop. Brain fog had really taken over at that time. But I got this message out and it went viral. Thousands of people across the world were sharing my message about breathing techniques, about how to cope with this, about not to let the fear take over. Those things, those little things made such a difference. And I found myself speaking on radio and TV and, you know, people reaching out to me to coach them through this, take them through the fear. So that was my journey of Sanjeev Speaks. That's where it started. And I had some wonderful people who I'd mentored over the last 10 years prior to that said, "We need to get you out there more and we need to help you serve more." And that's where Sanjeev Speaks started.
Wow. I love your story, your share. That's really awesome. I think it's interesting how sometimes it takes a life event that is almost catastrophic to get us to move forward and to land where we are supposed to be. Not saying that your life was not going in the way that it should, because I think that we are where we are because we're supposed to be there and it just goes the way it should go. But it took that, and now you have an amazing message that can speak to anyone, any age, any race, any ethnicity, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's a clean, clear, powerful message. And that even in your leadership, I know you have something called the 3 R's that I would love to talk about today. But I do have this question for you as we transition into how you're talking about transitional leadership. Like, what is that? Could you define what that means and what it
Transformational leadership.
transformational leadership?
So you talked earlier about people trying to think back to COVID. Some people want to get back to how it was. Some people are figuring it somewhere in between. But you know, the reality of life and the world is this constant change.
Yeah.
And the times that we're in demand is a step up. With the world of social media bombarding us, not knowing what's true, what's real, what's not, with artificial intelligence, with the pressures of the economy, leaders have to step up. And when I'm talking about transformational leadership, I'm talking about stepping up in every sense. I'm not just talking simple business school numbers here. I've got an MBA from one of the top business schools in the world. But I'm talking about the real human starting point. It starts with me. So when I'm talking to leaders and leadership teams, it's about stepping back from the noise. So that's where it brings in the 3Rs model. I did a TED talk on the 3Rs. And in the leadership context, if the listeners out there are running their own business, are leaders within organizations, heck, we're leaders in our families, this still applies. Because when we're in the mix of everything, when constantly trying to stay afloat, battling what's in front of us, we become desensitized. We become fearful and we become numb. So what do? I help leaders and groups of people, individuals and teams to stand back and be in a safe space where I help them reflect. The first R of the 3Rs is reflect. Let me try and illustrate that to you. I say to many people, I'm standing in front of an audience, I said, everybody in this room is the smartest person in the world when it's talking about somebody else or looking at something else outside of our lives. So what do I mean? Let me give you a simple example. If we're watching a movie or something on the TV, a TV serial, we can sit in the cinema seat here, watch the big screen, and we can relate to the characters in there. Maybe some of them we have a personal affinity to, some of them are like us, but even if they're not, we connect with them. And we connect with them emotionally and intelligently. So what do we do then? We sit there and go, when there's a, you know, how are movies and stories scripted? There's a high, there's a low, there's a high, there's a low, and then there's a climax, right? But through that, we're sitting there, hey, you should be doing this. Hey, you should be doing that. Why don't you not do this? Why are you not doing that? Why? Because we're standing back as the observer. And when we can do that with our own lives in a safe space, get off the treadmill in a safe space to go, okay, stand back. Let's think openly, objectively, put the ego aside, put whatever you know aside, and let's just look at this as a clean slate. What do you see? Self-reflection, you don't have to share it with everybody, but quite often you get people in tears because they notice things about their behavior, their challenges, things come out. And then the stress of dealing with what they're coping with. But when they can stand back and then have the reassurance that they're not alone in this, that's the other thing that people tend to get into. We all get into that feeling that we're struggling with this. But the more I've experienced life, more I've led teams, more I've helped coach people, the more it's come to, you know, the reality is we're all human. Some of us wear a mask better than others. Some of us probably have going through a phase of life where it doesn't shake us as much, but the reality is we're all human. And in this time, it's more important than ever to stand back and be human, to get back down to basics. Where's your balance? What's the purpose of all of this? Create purpose, meaning for people in your environment and doing it in a strategic way rather than literally making a decision day to day. Sometimes we have to make tough decisions, but when you can do it standing back from the flames, you'll still feel the heat, but you're not being burnt. You're not firefighting in the middle of that. So you can go back and go, okay, I'm going to go back and tackle it like this. So that's the reflect. You stand back and you see different patterns. Imagine the night sky. Those first ancestors of ours who looked up at the night sky and said, hey, I can see a bear. I can see a plow. I can see it. Because they were looking at these and making patterns. Humans connect to stories, right? That's how faith comes into it. That's how belief comes into things. That's how meaning and purpose come into whatever we do. So you reframe. You've heard this on many of your guests, I'm sure, and people who have explored the field of human performance and NLP. They'll know about reframing. So what do? We literally look at the stars or the dots on the page and we go, right, how can we repattern this? The dots are always there. At the moment, our circuit shows this pattern. What other patterns are there that are more useful to me we don't always have a perfect choice. We rarely have a perfect choice, but we have a choice. And getting to that stage of we have a choice empowers us, Shante, empowers us to go, okay, I'm not being bombarded. I'm making a conscious choice. And then you own it. So that's that reframe. And then owning is resetting. So reflect, stand back from the noise. Reframe, make a different choice or choices. And then reset, let's go. And constantly understanding that loop. Sometimes in life, it's something that's happening so intensely, you have to do this loop regularly. That's okay, or more frequently. And on a business front, it can be strategic as well as more short term. So that's the 3 R's, and that's transformational leadership, transforming people to step up and be the best person that they are, because we all have that potential within us, and looking at the world in a different way and connecting with people, not letting the machinery and the technology take over our lives. The people that are going to rise to the top are the ones who will connect with humans as humans.
I love that share. So we get to take away the 3 R's. Do you believe that to be a leadership that a person would have to be like an extrovert, or is that like a misconception?
From my experience, my early childhood would have told me it has to be an extrovert, but I absolutely don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
I think the most powerful leaders are those who are able to stand back and be reflective. The ones who listen. I've actually got a model that I created for leadership in my world that I try to promote. It's called the HEALS model. I believe
They
leadership is
heal.
about healing.
They
Heal. A
heals up.
leader heals. So it's an abbreviation. So the characteristics of a great leader. Firstly, HATE stands for humility. A great leader has to have humility to accept that whatever you've achieved, whatever you think you've done, you haven't done it alone. You've had the right set of circumstances, the right deck of cards. And yeah, you've used your intellect. You've had your part in that. Treating people goes back to the human position. You treat people, whatever status they have, whatever position they have, as a human. So humility, that conscious humility. And it's something that I practice every single day. I reflect on my behavior and I look to serve. One of my prayers in the morning, part of my prayers is let me serve those in need. And then E for empathy and emotional intelligence. A leader who, again, you talked about extrovert, introvert. I find the most mature, emotionally intelligent leaders are the ones who are able to have that humility and have the ability to observe and understand people. I think it's important. Emotional intelligence, one of the characteristics of me is the ability to understand others rather than choose to be understood.
I love that. Emotional intelligence in a leader, it makes it difficult for them to be able to have the skills to really lead other people because their emotions are always overtaking them. For me, it's something I need in a leader. It's hard to want to follow if I see that you're not able to be in control of your emotions. And I'm not saying that they cannot be human because everyone's human. But when you're leading people, we need that emotional intelligence there. You have to be able to have that leadership hat on. I just feel like you just need it. It's this might sound awful, but I feel like when you're a leader, there's like a different standard. It's like those are qualities that you absolutely must have. Otherwise, you should not be leading people.
Shante, what the world has inherited over many years are leaders who have become leaders because of their technical competence. And that doesn't make you a great leader. And
Exactly.
that's the challenge in business. You have all of these amazing people who are absolutely brilliant in their technical space, but those qualities of leading people, leading organizations, having emotional intelligence are missing.
Yeah.
Actually, thought about how important that is. And that's why I said, you can see I'm an evangelist in terms of whatever I believe in, whatever I experience, I'm going to go out there and talk to leaders and organizations objectively for who's good, for their good. And that takes me to the next step of this. So humility, emotional intelligence, empathy, to awareness. Now, this is a bit that leaders have to be aware. So awareness starts from themselves. So self-awareness takes you back to the 3 R's model. The first step of the 3 R's model is stand back to reflect and put your ego aside, right? You
Yes.
put your ego aside and you go, it starts with me. What? And then hearing from other people. So I do a lot of collective work where we've got leaders together when, you know what? Here, different organizations, it's fine. Or within the organization, but let's put it aside your titles. Let's just look at this situation. And those leaders who truly want to lead are the ones who embrace change and take those lessons on. And I share examples with them. I give them exercises to do. But that awareness starts with me. Development do I have to do? What are my traits that perhaps aren't working for me, as well as the people I'm responsible for? How many leaders are out there who literally sit out and run an organization without understanding their people? You hire amazing people on this, you go on this recruitment drive where you spec out a job, you put out a salary for it. And yeah, if it doesn't work out, you chuck them. If you think somebody's good enough, understand what good means for this role, what qualities that you need. The world has changed. We need leaders and people who can think on their feet, who are emotionally sound and intelligent.
Oh, yes.
Who can work in diverse environments, who can take on change. So that's a mindset thing.
Oh, yeah.
And looking for people with the right mindset. If you've got people already, then fine, invest in them. If they make mistakes is how inventions happen, right?
Yeah.
Having the courage to go, it's okay. But until you have an awareness of who you have, and an objective, like I said, objective awareness with empathy, with the right communication, and there'll be some difficult conversations, that's life. But having that ability to be aware, and then aware of the environment that your business and the world is in, and making sure that everything that you do has that level of nuance based on that understanding. So now it becomes complicated. It's not, I'm really good at programming. I'm really good at this finance. Yeah, sure, great. But how does that qualify you to be a leader?
What is your opinion about people leading from, okay, so you know how with COVID, everybody was like working from home, and then what happened is like all the staff had to go back to work. And then there's some states that are places where they don't have offices, or either these companies are like half of their staff is hybrid or permanent work from home. What is your opinion about leadership from at home, but then your staff is in the office, where the people leading it are not able to understand the culture or the environment in which the staff is working in, but they're leading it and making decisions for that staff that's there, not understanding the conflict or the challenges that they're facing? Is that something that could be worked through, or is it best for that style of leadership to change? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great question. And I'll share what I believe on it because I've always believed in this. And I'll share an example from my own journey. When I left university, I started off in banking as a graduate trainee. And as part of that program, they send you to different functionalities on a 3-month roster. You go into departments, you get yourself technically up to speed, and then you move on. And kind of that was the leadership program. And then I remember a time when it was economically difficult. Interest rates were rising, house repossessions were going through the roof. I was given the responsibility as a young person to manage a department where they were managing mortgage books, from the applications of mortgages through to the life of it and through to payment challenges. And I remember my very first day in that room. And the way the office was set out at the time, prior to me taking over, was very much like a classroom. The desks were like this, and the manager would sit at the front, and people would do their thing, because I got to speak to them as I was learning. And I called them first in the morning. I remember, okay, let's have some coffee and biscuits together. I got the coffee and biscuits. Yeah, it's not for somebody else to do, because people sit there and go, okay, what's a leader do? A leader does everything.
Oh, yes.
And I remember sitting down and I said, listen, guys, I'm just a facilitator. The experts are you guys. Help me help us. So come talk to me. What challenges do we face? let me sit with each of you. Let's work through this. And they went, nobody's ever asked us that before.
Mhm.
And I went, yeah, but genuinely, how much can I know? You guys are at the coal face of this, right? You're at the front end, the sharp end. So that's where the real knowledge is. And sure, as a leader, I have to help manage all that information and knowledge, but I want to need your help for us to work something out differently. And that was such a powerful thing, powerful approach. And I really believe that in every single role I've taken on, every single place I've been to, a leader who started at the bottom or who walks the floor, who walks at the front end, front coal face of the organization, is a leader who has a better chance of tuning into what's really happening. As I said, with the bombardment of information and the challenges financially, it's so easy for leaders to drift into sitting at a desk and making judgment calls. But they have to walk and live the life of the people that they're leading, I believe, to really truly understand, to really truly then to make judgment calls. But also from a morale point of view, a leader who's with you at the front, facing the challenges, picking up the phone, dealing with difficult situations that your front-facing staff often have to deal with, is really powerful. And I really believe that's what, certainly the style of leadership that I promote, it's based on servant leadership as a basis, but servant leadership has much more to it than just the surface. Servant leaders do also have to make tough decisions.
Yes.
But if you have that humility, the emotional intelligence and empathy, the awareness, part of that awareness is knowing your people, being around them and living their life. I was speaking to a CEO that I was working with recently, and she's doing some amazing work in the field of mentoring. And she said, look, Sanjiv, this is what I'm finding. When I'm speaking to other senior leaders and HR professionals, they're saying they're finding their leadership switching off, the silent resignation, if you like. Leaders they've invested 10, 15 years to get to that position are basically becoming disenchanted because they become numb. So they're making decisions that they don't connect with. That meaning and that purpose is lost, so that they need to tune back into purpose. So one of the things I do is help people find their reason why and their purpose. And again, back down to being human. What do we have that's unique that God has given us above every other part of creation is that humanness, that ability to communicate, have empathy, and reflect on how we do things and make a difference to people we will never perhaps meet physically, but we can make a difference in their lives.
Yes, it does. It does. I know that I was speaking with a few people who were sharing with me that they were having some morale issues and that they were feeling like their particular leadership group was making decisions for them without really understanding the culture. A certain percentage of their management was working from home, not because they want to, they actually don't have an office location for them to go into in that particular state. Just speaking with different people who don't even speak with one another or know each other, they were sharing similar stories where their morale is down. And it's because they feel that there's a huge disconnect with their leadership. And when most of them come on site, they won't even greet half of the staff, just a certain portion of them. They will go and say good morning to them, but the other certain people, they won't even speak to them, even though they don't work with them and see them every day. And so that's a part of their morale issue as well, is that they were feeling like this is not real leadership, because like you only acknowledge certain people. And so I was wondering, like, for a group like that, with that type of challenge, how they would be able to, the only way to fix that, it has to come from the top.
The tone and the culture of an organization starts at the top. I've been invited to speak and work with some really large organizations. When they talk to me about inclusion and the culture, and the CEO says this, and they want to drive change and engagement within their workforce through the sorts of challenges you've described, I sit there and say, okay, so how are they actually listening? How are they actually implementing this? Are they just doing this for the sake of, yeah, we're doing this inclusivity work, or we're listening to you? Who are you reporting to? If you have a challenge, think about this. If you're a worker and you have a challenge because of the culture of your next line manager, for example, the CEO, how determined is the chief of that organization or the leadership of that organization to really understand what's going on? Have they got the courage to really find out? Because sometimes they don't want to find out because they know the answer they'll get. You're basically creating a bigger problem for yourself in the future. You're in denial. So for me, as if you're a worker and you've got leadership like this, try to suggest some sort of quality circles or focus groups where you get to feedback, but feedback without being personal. I mean, feedback, nobody likes feedback.
Right.
Feedback in a way of behaviors and impact as opposed to people. So describing a situation saying, look, this is how it feels, where a leader comes in and they only think to certain people, that has this impact on the morale of everybody else. So asking the question, what else could you do? And the benefit of having a better morale in the organization, what benefit would that have to the business? So talking to the leadership in language or terms that kind of work for them, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly I think it's the responsibility of a leader for sure. And then to have leaders in his team who that leader takes the responsibility of to ensure they then carry out that same culture across their span of control or domain. Because it has to be this. Pushing upward is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Impossible. You can make a difference in the pockets and the bubbles that you're in because life is like that. Make a difference where you can, when you can, how you can.
Yes. Yes. It would just be a faster and a broader impact if it came from the top down. So they're in a situation there where they are just in that situation.
They're in a situation, but maybe even a leader, let's put yourself in the shoes of the leader. And this is a maybe. I'm not saying this is what's happening, but he can get very lonely as a leader. And this is something I hear a lot from senior leaders in the world of business and organizations, that they understand that they're causing very difficult times. They understand that they're kind of affecting a lot of people and are not close. So that's a lonely place. Figuring out if somebody reached out to them, or if there's a way of reaching out to them or starting an initiative and kind of pushing it that way, maybe, if there's centers of influence, even in organizations, it's not a linear line of behavior, right? There'll be some people within organizations who get it somewhere in that structure and some don't. I say to people often, look for a senior champion somewhere. It might not be the people right at the top, but look for people, stakeholders who get it. Go and have a coffee with them, a virtual coffee. Share your thoughts, have a representative, and say, yeah, this is how it's feeling. Even them kind of listening to you and finding somebody who empathizes with you can be a starting point of saying, okay, so what kinds of things can we explore? What kinds of things can we do? Applying it and making sure it happens all the way through. And all the way through that, there's layers of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, the sort of information that gets fed back, and sometimes it filters. So sometimes a leader doesn't know, or they might have the feeling of isolation themselves, thinking, well, so that's why I work with the leadership teams and people who are rising through that, to give them options, get them to explore options of how they can break out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes people have a town hall and say, right, okay, we're going to do this once a quarter, share what's going on, share the sorts of things that we're facing, share how we do this as an organization, as a team. But yeah, we can't influence the leaders directly until the leadership at the top make the decision that this is how it's got to go.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're doing this because I think that what started happening for some time is that people were being put in positions without having the proper training. And being a good worker doesn't always mean that you're a good leader. Sometimes You could be promoted based off of like you're a great employee without having those people skills, without having the heal, without having the RRR, the 3 Rs. Something in there is missing. And so people like you leading people, like being someone who helps to coach and teach your models, I think is really amazing because they need that. I think it's absolutely necessary, especially after COVID, because there was a disconnect for some years in between. Change is inevitable. So it's time to get with the new way of doing things. You mentioned AI. We have to talk about AI.
Let me
Every
finish up.
yes,
Sorry, go
yes.
on. No, go for it.
I was going to say every organization is now coming out with AI and they're finding ways to bring it in and embrace it. At first, we thought we were gonna, like, not need people, like, they started pulling out cashiers from the stores, and now we see that they're pulling these machines out that were ringing people up, where they would do self-checkout, and they're now removing them and bringing people back in, and then corporate America has now brought AI into call centers and helping their staff to be able to utilize this AI to help them to be better. What is your opinion about AI, and do you think that utilizing it in the way that they're starting to now is that it could lead to is that a positive thing or is it something that could lead us in the wrong direction?
Okay. Another great question. The answer we just covered in terms of leaders. So the
Okay.
HEAL model: humility, empathy, awareness, listen. So your question
Oh, I
about,
can't believe I forgot the L.
so when you're saying
Okay.
leaders sitting by themselves and not connecting with people, the leader has to learn how to listen. Even if there are no physical offices, they have to figure out how they're going to listen. As a good leader, you have to learn to listen. If you look at a leadership role as a responsibility and an opportunity to serve, then your whole lens changes, your perspective changes. So HEAL stands for humility, empathy, awareness, listening, and service.
Oh, I love it. Heals,
Heals,
plural,
yes.
like not just
Someone
heal.
heals, right? So someone healing
Yeah.
somebody from pain, healing somebody from an injury, but healing an organization. So I believe this model really works in the day we are. And you talk about AI. So I've been in panels and conversations about AI from a very technical point of view, but also from a human behavioral point of view. And we're seeing this. The pace of change is so rapid. I
Mhm.
guess where it leads, we have to be controlling. We have to control, we have to be wary of it. Why? Because it's like having the genie out of the box at the moment. The level of intelligence and energy being used up by data centers is incredible. But what you're describing is that what initially the implementation of technology meant we're going to lose people. And like you said, on the cashiers, on checkouts disappearing. And then they went, actually, this isn't working.
Yeah.
So plug them back in. Then in an organization, like you said, in a call center, are you going to replace a person just because something could replicate a voice? Well, no, because humans make human decisions. And so using AI as an enabler, AI is just an enabler. It's not a, so people go, I'm in the AI business. Well, what does that mean? AI is everywhere. It's how do you use this when ability to manage data and technology to enable more effective work, basically more effective business. And there'll be certain, I still believe there'll be certain types of work that will become obsolete because it will just be done. I mean, we talk about software. My son was trained in software programming. He works in big data, but he tells me that some of the stuff that he used to have to do and used to take days to figure out, this technology can help them go, yeah, this is the answer. Great. But that doesn't remove the need for people who are software engineers because it's like having a pilot on a plane. The planes have the technology to auto take off, auto land, but does that mean you take away the damn pilot? No,
No,
better not, right? So that's
yeah.
the thing, right? I believe that there'll be key, people need to think about how they evolve because there is change and you have to embrace the change. And you can either sit there and say, no, I'm not going to change. Life will change. Everything changes, like the seasons change, like this planet has changed over the years. Or you can embrace it and say, okay, So what can I do to equip myself? And if you're an organizations, you should make things available for people to help them learn, to facilitate learning. It doesn't have to be on the job. Give them access to tools that they can self-learn. Because when you look at a change in a positive light, let me figure out how to embrace this. My father was a lovely man, but him and technology, he'll have 3 thumbs. That kind of, he just couldn't get anything right? And whenever I used to have a conversation with him, he said, look, we're too old. And I used to say, listen, we're never too old. Yeah, we're never too old. Life, we don't know how many breaths we have. We could be there till 100 or something, and we could be gone tomorrow. Embrace each day with a positive mindset. It's not a criticism. It's an opportunity. And if those opportunities are laid in front of you, embrace them. If they're not there, go find them, right?
Yes.
Take control of your life. And that's kind of my general advice to people, that you can't be in control, as we talked about with COVID and my journey in there. I've had that in business as well. I've ended up in business where I've had to make some really tough calls, where I've made business decisions and choices going into business with somebody, with some partners, based on my judgment of them at the time, that they had all the right business qualifications, corporate experience, and we had this great opportunity that they pulled me into. Got excited by the business idea and signed, a contract and invested in this business without understanding who I was getting into bed with, right? And when things get difficult, that's when you realize okay, hang on a second. I use those challenges that I faced to kind of, when I'm now working with organizational leaders, entrepreneurs, and they've got this idea, go, who's your team? Tell me about your team. It's important. Tell me about your team and how that team works and what's at stake for each individual. For me, I had a situation, Shanta, where one of the founders got greedy and he wanted to get rid of another one. Just as our business was taking off, and he took me for a walk one day and he said, Sanjiv, you and I make this business tick. You and I have built this business and this great opportunity, it's going to explode. I've got an investor who wants to come in. Let's pull him in and let's get rid of the director shareholder. I went, ooh, that doesn't work for me. He said, no, you don't understand big business, because he'd been on the boards of large corporations for many years. And he said, this is how it works. And I said, well, it might work there, but it doesn't work in any business that I'm part of. I can't do that. So long story short, he tried to dangle carrots in front of me on different conversations saying, look, if you agree to this, here's a fancy service contract. I'll sign yours, you sign mine. And when the investor's money comes in, we can live it up, basically. I went, that's not fair on the investor either, because until we're making money, morally, I can't be getting people to invest in a business to basically fund a lifestyle for me. They're investing in the business and me. But equally, you can't get rid of this guy. If he wants to be bought out, buy him out. And he said, no, he has to walk away with nothing because the business is worth nothing at the moment. Yeah, that was the key. And I went, that's stealing. He said, no, that's how businesses work. Let me tell you what was at stake, Shanta. I had worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life.
Wow.
I'd wrapped up borrowing my credit cards. I'd sold things to just basically get to this position. And everything in the business was about to take off. Like we had everything lined up. But on this point of principle, this moral point of principle, I had to make a judgment call. And I didn't think twice about it. I said, no, I can't back it. He said, well, then I'm going to have to bring the business down. I said,
what did he mean by bring it down?
Yeah, exactly, right? I didn't understand that either. So I said, no, I can't support it. He walks away. We went home. We came back the next morning to the office and the door had been broken in. Somebody had ripped out the hard drives. Somebody had taken away some of our data. We didn't know what the heck was going on. Obviously, we kind of suspect who it was, but we had no expectation that somebody would do something so crazy. And then I was due to fly out to our offshoring partners that weekend with him. And on the way to the airport, I was getting calls saying, what's going on? From these offshoring partners saying, what's going on in your business? I said, nothing. Why? Are you still flying out to see us? Yeah. Are we still doing this launch? Yeah. Shante, what he'd been doing, and I realized this as the days went by, he was sending poison emails. Now, I don't know if people understand what a poison email is. In law in this country, you can allege anything you want without getting into legal trouble. Now, that in law had no basis of challenge. I couldn't do anything about it. So basically, the banks froze the business bank account. I got the advice of a barrister, and the barrister said, "You are absolutely right. You too. He is doing this, but this will take a long, drawn-out legal battle back and forth. How much money do you want to waste?" I said, "So what do you suggest?" He said, "You either stop the business or you buy him out." And we were so close to taking loss. We took the decision to buy him out, despite him being so nasty. Now, the challenge and the curveballs that we had after he left were ridiculous. Like, he had taken our business plan, gone to a competitor, he'd sold the idea to them, they'd gone to often them double the money we were paying them for the acquisition. So then we were having to deal with that and reinvent ourselves. It was an absolute roller coaster, but I am at peace that I did the right thing. Yes, financially I suffered, but I learned a lot in business. I managed to turn the business around and stabilize it. And eventually we sold the business. But the lessons you learn in those difficult times are the ones that make you. You know, gold is forged in fire, right? Diamonds are polished, broken, bashed to bits. But then that's when you get this true sparkle of the diamond. And I believe I see the diamond and the potential in everybody, the jewel in everybody and every organization. It's up to them to have the courage and the conviction to stay the course and be a part of this journey to help bring out the real true beauty and strengthen somebody. But life isn't a simple straight line. I wish it was A, B, C, D, and A plus B equals C, and you're going to be a millionaire overnight. But when you learn these skills, you can navigate life better. You can navigate the challenges better. You've got to embrace life rather than fear it.
I love that you have, I would say resilience is definitely there for sure and has shown up in your life. You definitely have that badge of resilience.
But I'm not sitting on my laurels because I've seen so much. You've only heard some of it. So,
you know what's interesting? I would say that 90% of the people that have successful businesses, if you ever really have a conversation with them in private, they would share with you that they did something similar to what the guy wanted you to do. And I'm not saying that the entire world is a horrible place, you know, and that people are bad or anything like that. But if you've ever had a really good conversation with someone who was really like, they would share with you that a lot of them said that they've done things in their past that was unethical, or that if they had to go back and change something when they're looking at their entire life, that sometimes the way that they did business in a cutthroat way would be something that they would go back and change. And because it was something that they were taught, that that's how you get ahead and that's how you get the way that you do things. Not every single person is like that, you know, but the way how he's thinking, a lot of them, that's how they think, which is terrible.
it's a reality. I can't disagree because I've experienced it a lot. But you still have, as me, I just go back to my choices.
Yeah, people have morals. You have to have morals and values. What do you value the most? When you have a solid set of decisions, you can sometimes stand back and go, wow, I wonder how they're sleeping at night, because it's about having peace. It's about your values, your morals, and what matters to you the most. Some people have never had an opportunity to sit down and say, what do I value the most? What's important to me? They think that it's success and money, but you can't get there and have real peace doing it in a way where it's unethical.
Can I share a perspective with you?
Yes.
Which might be a bit controversial, but again,
it's okay.
I used to be very much exactly that simple in terms of thinking, how do they sleep at night? But what I've seen is people do sleep at night. However, for me, it's about, you know, when I go back to knowing yourself, knowing yourself and knowing what your values are, is you who have to be congruent. If we have these values and we're tuned into our values, however much we try and break out of them, we won't sleep at night. But equally, there are people in the world, unfortunately, for whatever reason, who can become are numb to it, are oblivious to it, for whatever else it is. And, it's a much bigger philosophical question about how we're born, what deck of cards we're born with,
Yeah.
what environment, all of those kinds of things. So it's a much deeper conversation. So I've learned to accept that my choice, and that's back down to owning it, my choice is I want, based on my moral compass, to be able to sleep at night. I will put all of this above that shortcut. I think everybody morally has, nobody would say they're immoral. If you ask anybody, whoever they are. But I think when the pressure's on is when you really find out what you're made of.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how I kind of shared that example. For all of us, we're facing tough economic times, me, you, everybody. But, being true to what's important. And, when you declutter, one of my kind of recommendations that I've done is I declutter, chase and run and doing this and doing that. We kind of accumulate things in your life, in your possessions. What I start to do is declutter. I suggest to people go and do things altruistically. Pick something small. I don't care. Go help out a shelter. Go and help a local charity. I do stuff like winter food banks. So when I go shopping for the food banks, Shante, sometimes I'm in tears because I'm sitting there I'm stuffing up these trolleys and I'm thinking, here's a choice between something that's got a chocolate filling in it, biscuits, or here's a plain one. I can buy more plain ones. And there's chocolate. In my family, I'm blessed that never had to make that decision with my kid. I'm thinking, but then I'm not going to make a choice like that for anybody else. If I'm going to give back, let me give back with my whole heart.
Oh, I love that.
When you're helping and serving those less fortunate, whatever traumas and challenges you've been through kind of puts it into perspective. My kind of spiritual master, my guru, His Holiness Brahma Goswami, he literally walked the talk. His message in life was, in the joy of others, lies our own. In the progress of others, rests our own. And for me, that has become an embedded compass. And I think you have the same, right? In terms of you have your morals and you have your values, and that is your compass. So live true to that, because that's where you'll get peace. And I think that the focus for everybody should be, what's going to bring you peace?
Yeah, and that makes sense. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, thanks for bringing that up. But it's one of those lessons in life, and you kind of accept it. And would I change who I am? No.
Mhm. Wow, that's awesome. And so you were able to sell the business. That's good that you were able to sell the business. And I love everything that you're doing. I think that it's really awesome. And you mentioned that you did a TEDx talk.
That's right.
I love that. I love TEDx talks. And I've had former guests who were also a part of TEDx. And I think that what people don't realize, you don't just wake up and go, oh, I'm just going to go on TED Talk. There's a process, and you actually have to be at a certain level of speaking to be able to make it to that point to be a TEDx speaker. It's just a different level.
Look, I think there's doing the best you can, and then the stars aligning. And I think it's a combination of that.
Mm-hmm.
My TEDx talk I did shortly after COVID, and I wanted, this is my mindset. I deliver talks for a living. I do training for a living, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like this in any room. You give me a subject, a topic, I'll go talk about it. I'll embrace it and I'll enjoy it. But for that TED talk, that became the toughest thing for me, because I said, I want to make a difference to the people in the room right now, because the world's in such difficult times. And with a TEDx, it's a university, right? And so, or that demographic onwards. And I think I want to give something to everybody at every stage in life. So that's why I thought, let me try and illustrate this 3 R's model in a way that everybody can relate to. So I talked about my early life and how I was that kid who always used to observe. And despite the challenges, this is what I was. I was the one who was watching for the patterns, trying to make sense of the world. And how challenges and difficult times are a norm of life, but with how humans have this amazing ability to adapt. So challenges, stretches, and trying to give that perspective. And that's how I started the 3 hours conversation. When you hear it, the listeners will see that I was still inflamed with COVID, like the long COVID part of it. I was very much kind of, okay, compose, keep going. But I was determined to deliver it something that meant, and the more emotional it is, the more real it is. Kind of you feel it here anyway, right? So I was desperately wanting to share something that people could relate to. And I had so many people in the audience and afterwards come back to me and saying that was something that brought them to tears, but that they could really relate to. And what's beautiful, it was the people from around the world, and people from all generations. And people still message me saying, I needed to hear that. So is it the most fluent talk I've given? Definitely not. Is it something I'm proud of in terms of I gave something back that I wanted to make a difference in that moment for that time? Yeah. But I would love to do another one.
I think that I could totally see you doing another one.
If anybody's out there listening, doing a TED conference, I'm available.
I totally can see it. If I can find the link, I definitely will have it. You guys can look in the show notes and click on the link. All of the information for Sanjeev, did I say your name right? Sanjeev Speaks will be in the show notes where you can connect with him on social media. And if someone wanted you to come to the organization to speak with the leadership, how would they get you there?
Ping me, DM me. I have an Instagram page, Sanjeev Speaks. I'm on LinkedIn as Sanjiv Speaks. My name's Sanjiv Patel. I have a website, www.sanjeevspeaks.com. Get in touch. You can hear what I'm about. I'm passionate about, and I've lived the experience of what I'm talking about. I'd love to try and help anybody I can if there's organizations and leaders out there who think I can help. Let's start the conversation.
Absolutely. I love it. People need you. The organizations need you. What's happening across the board is that there's a shift happening. And in that shift, I believe organizations are realizing that they need to bring people in. They need you. They need you to come on in and help them to be able to help the people, because I think that leadership is a smaller portion than the next level. So it has to start there with getting their minds right. And then they can help to shift the minds of their employees. And so I think that your 3R model is beautiful. And I love heels, both of them. It's just like amazing. I've enjoyed talking with you.
Bless you. And thank you for having me on the show, Shanta.
Thank you for coming on. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with before we end our episode?
I want to leave the listeners, I guess, with hope and understanding that whatever life's challenges and the noises that are around us, we have the ability to take control and cut out the noise. So whatever that means. So I hope what I've left the listeners with is something that they can connect with, something that feels real, something that's relatable, and something that gives them food for thought or exploration of how they can take some of those insights and use them practically for themselves. And it can be small steps like cutting out the noise. I talked about breath work, simple things like just taking a breath, but a controlled breath. The US Navy SEALs use a full breath box system. So for a count of 4, breathe in, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. And the US Navy SEALs use this to focus and declutter in stressful moments. So if it's powerful enough, something as simple as that in breathwork is powerful enough for the US Navy SEAL, then I'm sure it's something that is worth trying for each and every one of us.
Actually talk about that in a book that I have about mindfulness that comes out in November. That's like in one of the sections I talk about how Navy SEALs it's a certain type of breath work because there's like different.
And to be a book.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. What's it called, Shanta?
It's Jam With Me, A Journey to Your Higher Self. And then it's like the part 4, mindfulness. They should have taught us this when we were kids.
Love it.
So it's super long, but there's 3 parts already out that's been out for a couple of years or maybe 3 years, but that's number 4 about mindfulness.
Can I share something else in that case?
Absolutely.
So I'm working on the last stages of a journal.
Nice.
And I'm calling it Growing Through What You're Going Through.
Oh, I love it.
So it'll be available to order through the website. And through the COVID journey, remember I told you about how traumatic it was and dealing with the pain and long COVID, etc. There's a book that I'm working on. It's a bit further down the line, but it's called Just Breathe.
Just breathe.
So through the storms of life, through the phases of life, then, going back down to just breathe. A lot of the practical exercises you're talking about, because as I said, I come from a place culturally where meditation and yoga has been a part of my daily routine. And the power of that breath, of kind of standing back, is about just breathing, dealing with traumatic, difficult situation, breathing through it, strengthening yourself, healing yourself through breath work. But it's not just literally breath work, it's a way of thinking as well. So that's how this book is going to come together.
Nice.
Yeah, look out for that too.
Oh, I love it. So there's some good things in the works with you that you guys have to look forward to. And I think that is really a great thing. It's definitely been an enjoyable conversation. And when your journal gets ready to come out, or your book, either one, you are definitely welcome to come back. And that's an open invitation for you.
Listen, stay blessed. Keep up the amazing work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sanjiv, for coming on Authentic Talks and for hanging out with me. You guys, I hope that you found HEALS, HEALS, will be beneficial for you in your life, and to use this motto when you're facing life's tough situations or diversity. We've had a lot going on in the United States over the past few weeks where there's a lot of tension and there's a lot of division that's being injected or inflicted or forced upon people. And I just want to take a moment to remind you that the HEALS model can be applied to so many different areas of our lives. And we have to remember, in his story of what he shared on this show, it reminds us in life's darkest moments, we have the power to reflect, to reframe, and to reset. And that leadership isn't just about titles, but it's about humanity, empathy, and serving others. If this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who could use a reminder that resilience is possible and that authenticity is power. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, you guys, Authentic Talks 2.0. That way you will never miss an episode that's filled with conversations to help you grow in the mind, body, and spirit. All the information is in the show notes on how you can connect with today's guest. And as always, until next time, keep walking in your truth and becoming your most authentic self. Thank you all so much for tuning in. My name is Shanta with Authentic Talks.